All right. Welcome to the Paid Search Association webinar today. We have Anthony Higman, who is the owner of ADSQUIRE. Luckily, I got to chat with Anthony ahead of time, and I could not be more excited about this webinar because I feel like we're going to learn so much about local service ads. The one thing that I want to call out ahead of time is our sponsors. So with Paid Search Association, we have Jumpfly, Clever Programmatic, and AdWorld Experience. We wouldn't be here today without our sponsors. I want to give this webinar as much time as humanly possible because, like I said, I think Anthony, in the legal space, I cannot think of anyone who knows more than Anthony. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and put everything on stage. And thank you so much for being here, Anthony.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. Okay, so today we are talking about Google local services ads, and really like everything I've learned about this platform and specific ad format over really it's 5 years now. So a little about me. Hold on, wait, how do I? Okay, a little about me. My name is Anthony Higman. I am the founder and CEO of ADSQUIRE. We are a legal marketing company based out of Philadelphia. I have been working with Google Ads for about 14 years, strictly in the legal vertical. So I wanted to start this presentation with kind of a little story about how I got into local services ads, and really why I pay so much attention to this platform. So it was, I think, 2018, 2019 when we started to hear rumors that local services ads were going to come out for personal injury lawyers. And at the time, I was the director of paid search at a different legal marketing agency. And we had heard these rumors over a couple weeks. And I said, no shot. There's no way that those stupid home ads are going to be shown for personal injury lawyers. Google makes way too much money off of pay-per-click ads. So like, no way it's going to happen. And 2 weeks later, they dropped local services ads for personal injury lawyers. So I was managing a team of 10. We had 150 accounts. So we had to really hustle to sign up 150 accounts onto local services ads for lawyers. So I learned a lot about the setup process then. And then ever since, I've been keenly interested in them because when we were running just PPC, we had about a 20% conversion rate on our PPC campaigns. And little by little, I saw that begin to drop. And it didn't disappear. It went to local services ads. But now we had this new platform to manage besides just PPC. And these ads were showing up at the top for different keywords. And it was kind of a slow introduction, but more and more they showed up for more things, more categories were added in, and more of the conversions went to Google local services ads. So that's kind of why I've been really interested in them ever since. People tend to go to where Google puts things at the top, and that's where local services ads are. So a little bit of background on local services. The way I like to describe this ad format is as if Google Ads and the IRS had a baby. So it's like Google Ads, kind of, but it's a little bit more bureaucratic in the setup process and also in how you manage these and what you can see and what you can't see. So more on background is these started out obviously in the home services category. And they were called home services ads. They started in about 2015. In 2017, Google rebranded them as local services ads and expanded them to more geos. And then ever since that expansion in 2017, they've continued to open up more and more business categories for local services ads. And today there's over 100 categories of service-based businesses that these are available for. So they're going to continue to get bigger and bigger. They test out new experimental categories in California and Florida, before they kind of push them out to the rest of the geos. So why Google local services ads? Like, why did Google make these? And just to be clear, this is kind of my thoughts on why this happened. This isn't like there's no real explanation on why Google's pushing these out to all these different service-based businesses. But the way I always think about it is, if you're Google and you have 20 years of Google Ads data, right? What do you do with all of that data? You make Google local services ads. And why I say that is because these show up at high conversion times during the day, and they show up on local searches, like things like near me, specific geo that's mentioned. So Google has all of that data on, hey, when do conversions happen? What are people typing in for local things? And that's kind of where and when they show this ad format. They don't show it all the time, right? So sometimes you might look at night and you might not see local services ads. It's because they're showing them during high conversion times. Also, another thing with these is, again, Google has all of that pay-per-click data. And what we found is that a cost per lead on local services ads tends to be super close to what cost per lead is on Google PPC. So they've got all that data, and it's kind of how they priced out cost per call on the local services ads platform. I also think it's partially due to changes in consumer behavior, how people interact with ads, and really changes to the internet overall, how, a lot of bad actors have popped up over time within Google Ads. Some people have lost trust in clicking on Google Ads. And so Google's put this prominent thing at the top called local services ads with a green check mark and super strict verification and background checks so that they know that who they're dealing with, and it gives people more trust. Okay. Some really good pros for Google local services ads are that you can test new markets or geographical areas or new service categories super fast now. Whereas before you'd have to make a Google Ads campaign, a new landing page, a new website. And you should do those things if you're going to test out new markets, but you can even do it without that now. If you just want to test, hey, let me see how much activity we get in the next town over, or if we expand our geographical area 20 miles, like how much more will we get? You can really easily do that within local services ads. And same thing with different subcategories. If you want to test them, you can test different subcategories by just clicking them on the back end of local services ads and see how that goes. What local services ads look like. So this is a view inside of the local services ads platform. Google local services ads are always changing. Basically, they are in a lot of different formats. But the best way that you can identify if it's a Google local services ad or not is it has this check mark, which is Google screened, or it has this check mark within the circle, which is Google guaranteed. So if you see an ad format that has one of these two things, then it is a Google local services ad, although they are changing and putting in new formats. So that's the best way to identify them. Again, what do they look like? This is a view of just the Google search results page. And you can see, I think this one was for roofer near me. And you can see that they show up at the very top of Google in this 2-pack. And then here's the view on mobile. It pretty much takes up the entire screen. And then also, when you click the show more on that 2-pack, it actually now expands into an 8-pack with 8 different advertisers. And then if you click the more below that, it takes you into the full profile, which has 20 different listings now. It used to be 50. It is now 20. And they do cycle in different advertisers if there's more than 20. So sometimes you may see different advertisers if you check back. Something I find super fascinating about Google local services ads is that they're run out of Google Ads accounts. So this is very interesting to me. And the reason I mention this is that there are certain principles and fundamentals that still do apply between these two platforms. So I think a lot of people on this call might be super experienced in Google Ads, which is why I wanted to mention, if you know the fundamentals of Google Ads, there is some crossover here since these are run out of Google Ads accounts. This is a local services ad account. And you can see some things within this like shell account that is a Google Ads account. Like there's conversion data in here, and there's some things in there that you can see by going into the Google Ads account that has the same number as your local services ads account. So some of these things that kind of do apply between PPC and LSA. An example I'll give here is like the vertical personal injury lawyer. I like to think of that sort of as a campaign. And then I like to think of these subcategories as ad groups. Okay, so if you work in a service area that has local services ads, I strongly encourage you to set up a profile today. And why do I say this? Here's the reason: free lead. So this advertiser that we work with, we set up a local services ads account for them 2 years ago. They have not turned the profile on to be paying for local services ads. And you can see here that they've gotten 1,323 calls in the last 2 years on local services ads without paying for any of those leads. So there's a way to do this, and I'm going to show you guys, and I'm going to show you why it works like this. But I strongly encourage you to not sleep on LSA, get into this. Even if you're not going to turn the profile on yet, at least get it set up. And you can do this strategy where you might be able to get free leads before you turn the profile on, or before it becomes very competitive and you want to get into the game. So how did that advertiser get all of these calls? There's free listings within Google Local Services Ads. So on this search right here, you can see I did carpenter near me. This second listing is a free listing. And you can see there's the little check mark on this advertiser. If it's a free listing, that's what they'll do. They'll put the green check mark on that advertiser. If there's multiple, then they'll have that green check mark at the top right under the actual vertical category. And I'll show you more here. So this is the same thing on carpenter near me. You can see in here, only one person in this specific vertical in Philadelphia is actually paying to be in local services ads. And so on the 2-pack, right, if they're going to show this feature with the 2-pack, then they have to show a free listing in this second spot. Okay. And so that's what happens, right? When they only have one advertiser who's paying, then they're going to show a free listing in that second spot. Also, people do click into the profile and go through the listings and look at all the free listings in this profile, and they'll click and they'll search around. Okay. Also, this changes like per geographical area, per zip code, per location. There are some locations, major metros, that are super competitive, and every law firm or every roofer is in local services ads and paying. But maybe 3 towns over, there's only one person paying, or there's 3 people paying. So there's a lot of opportunities for free listings right now. If you set one of these up and you expand your service area to, still be able to serve those clients, but with lawyers, it's a little bit different. So like that profile, we were able to expand to the state. They can serve the state, and they got those 1,300 calls. How to create a Google Local Services Ads profile. I'm not going to go into like the crazy technical aspects of this, although we do have a 90-page deck that will walk you through like each individual detail of this. I'm going to put that on our website, so you can find it there later this afternoon if you really do want like the step-by-step instructions on how to set up a profile. But really, it's pretty easy. If you're a business owner and you want to set one of these up, just go to Google, type in Google Local Services Ads, or you can go to this URL and click Get Started. It's going to ask you for a couple pieces of information on what kind of business you are, where you're trying to serve ads to, and then it'll walk you through the process of how to set these up. A couple things that you do need to set up local services ads is you do need a license. Like if you're a lawyer, you need a law license. If you're a roofer, you need a professional license. Real estate agent, real estate license. So you do need a professional license of some kind. You do need a Google business profile. You do need reviews for certain categories, not all categories, but for some, you do need a certain number of reviews to run these. And then you need to complete a background check. And that's pretty easy nowadays. It's through Evident, and really they just send you an email or a text message. They ask you a couple questions, and you take a picture of your driver's license. They do the background check, and then you're approved. Certain categories also do need insurance, certain kinds of insurance, general liability insurance, professional liability insurance for the medical vertical. Not all verticals require insurance. If you're going to create a new account and you're an agency, then you should have a Google Ads MCC. A lot of people don't even know that a local services ads MCC. A lot of people don't even know that they have a local services ads MCC, but if you have a Google Ads MCC, then you have a local services ads MCC. So if you're looking for that, then just go to Google and type in local services ads MCC, and it'll take you to this. And so if you're starting a new account as an agency, you just have to go to your MCC and then click that little plus button, and that'll walk you through the same thing to set up a new account in your MCC. Something that I very much recommend is setting up call tracking. And I recommend that you do this before you're going to create your Google Local Services Ads profile. So have a specific number set up in whatever call tracking software you're using, and label that number Local Services Ads or LSA. And then when you're creating your profile, put that in as your business number. The reason that I say this is because when the profile is turned off, you may be getting calls to the local services ads platform, but you don't know where they're coming from. So with the call tracking, it still lets you see that in your call tracking software, whereas there isn't metrics or recorded calls when the platform is off. So you get to see all of the calls that are coming in from local services ads in your call tracking software. Another thing that I do want to warn about with call tracking is don't do call recording if you're going to set up call tracking. Google has a pre-recorded message for this ad platform where they say, this is a Google call, it's being recorded. For lawyers, they said this call is not client attorney privileged. However, when you set up call recording on like CallRail or your call tracking software, it can lead to this weird lag because Google has that pre-recorded message. So then when you also add your call recording on top of that, again, there's this weird lag that happens. Like it's like a 3-second lag and people end up like talking over each other. So just a little tip there. How to make changes in local services ads. So you can make certain changes within the platform, things like budget, bidding, geolocation changes. You can add negative locations so that your ads don't show up there. But there's certain changes that you can't make within Google Local Services ads, things like changing your website, changing the phone number, changing the business name. These things all require you to call this number, and they'll send you a web change form that you fill out while you're on the call with them and send back to them. Save this number because sometimes they hide it and only have email options available, but local services ad support is a lot different than Google ad support. They're super helpful. They answer really fast nowadays. The teams have changed a few times, but again, save this number because it's awesome to have this, and Google local services ad support is extremely helpful. Where I spend my time in local services ads. So the first spot is the search results pages, just doing searches. I use a VPN. We use this thing called Valentine app. There's a bunch of different VPNs. Bright Local has one. And it allows you to put yourself in a specific geo and do that search and see what local services ads look like, or if they're showing up. I've probably done hundreds of thousands of searches for Google local services ads in different geos to kind of see what these are doing and study those changes over time. There isn't really, as of yet, a specific tool that tracks local services ads. Like there's SEO tools and ad tools. There really isn't one for Google local services ads yet because it kind of lives in its own platform. So actually going to Google search and doing these searches and seeing when local services ads show up, what kind of keywords they're showing up for, is super helpful. Also with that, you can do competitor research on profiles. Something that, like, two things that we look at when we're doing competitor research for local services ads that are super helpful is you can look at what services each advertiser has selected in their profile. Like, what are they bidding on? What subcategories do they have selected? And you can also see what geos they have selected on their profile. Both of these are drop downs when you click into a specific profile. The second spot that I spend most of my time is profile and budget. This is what the inside of a Google local services ads account looks like. You have budget and bidding down here. This is all like your business information at the top, and then your job types are to the right. So we've tested different budget and bidding methods over time. And basically, I encourage everybody to test different things. It's going to be different per geo and per practice area. But what we've found is that automated bidding is the one that works best. And I suggest setting your budget probably 30% over what you actually want that monthly spend to be. So if you're planning on spending $5,000 on local services ads, I would set your budget to $6,500 because you'll have more of a chance of getting to that $5,000 actual spend for specific verticals. That doesn't necessarily apply to like personal injury law because there are some problems with oversaturation in certain verticals. The next place that I spend a lot of time is reports. This is the reports tab within local services ads platform. It gives you how much you spent, the number of leads. It used to have like what the cost per lead was. You can obviously just do the math now, but they don't put that number there anymore. There's some metrics here, like impression share, an absolute top impression share, although these are different than what the Google Ads metrics are. So I encourage you to click the learn more there and read a little bit more about those. And then it gives you a graph of all the leads that came in. And then the number 3 spot, which is right below that, would be leads. So I honestly think that this is probably the place you should spend the most time in Google local services ads. And it's kind of annoying, but listening to calls, because you don't have a lot of data within Google local services ads, but you do get a lot of information from listening to these calls. So a lot of times people will say exactly what they typed in to get a local services ad to show up, like in the first 30 seconds of that call. So what we do is we add like a little section in our notes for like what the potential keyword was, so that we can kind of track what keywords are being searched for when Google's kind of testing new keyword sets, so that maybe if we're getting a lot of bad calls, we can click off a subcategory and hope that that works. But you also just get a lot of valuable data from listening to the information in these calls. There's a couple things that you can do within the lead section, which is like mark it as booked. There's also some differences here with, it's different for lawyers because kind of like the intake process and like actual booked appointment is not always like cut and dry like it would be for like a roofer or an HVAC repair, where on that call you're setting up an appointment. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than that, but marking booked, if you mark like a certain amount of leads as booked, they will show that as a little call out on your profile. So it'll say like 15 booked appointments in the last 30 days or something like that on the profile. Crossover categories. Okay. This is extremely important because a lot of people make this mistake, right? So for, let's say, criminal lawyer, let's say you're a criminal lawyer, but you really focus on DUIs, right? And so you set up an LSA profile and you select the criminal lawyer vertical, and then you just turn on DUI and reckless driving, right? Because you think that's the only thing. But you may neglect the fact that there's actually a separate DUI lawyer vertical that's just for DUI lawyers, okay? So make sure when you're setting up a profile that you take a look at all of the verticals that are in the platform and click in and see what the subcategories are, because there's crossover categories in almost any vertical within Google Local Services ads. So you might just start with one vertical and be neglecting a totally different one, and vice versa. I'll give you another example here with roofing. So let's say you're a roofer and you select the vertical roofer, and then you don't know that there's also a vertical called general contractor that has a roofing subvertical. Okay. So you might want to test also selecting the general contractor vertical and turning on that roofing subvertical. Again, this applies to almost any category within Google Local Services ads. An example that I give a lot for lawyers is that workers' compensation actually crosses over into 3 different verticals. It's personal injury, disability, and I'm going to forget the last one now, but it crosses into 3 different verticals. Performance drivers. So the way that this started out was Google was telling us all that the main drivers of performance were the 3 R's, and those were radius, responsiveness, and reviews. It still sort of is that, but I'm going to tell you and go through here some other performance drivers that we found over time. So again, bidding and budget is a big one. It's different per geo, per vertical. So definitely be testing different things there. Again, set your budget 30% higher than you're comfortable with, and you'll maybe hit your desired monthly spend in some verticals. Service area, practice area expansion. Google does encourage people to select like all the vertical or all the subcategories within a vertical and to expand your service area to get more shots at getting calls or showing up in the local services ads platform. Adopting new features is something that they're pushing as a performance factor. So these would be message leads, direct business search. These are both settings within the profile. And then the new one that we actually have seen being used as a ranking factor is high quality photos. And by that, I mean high resolution photos. So that they want really crisp photos for the local services ads platform. And we have seen hints of that being a ranking factor with people who do have high def photos showing more at the top than people who have lower quality photos. The other thing is reviews is a factor. Obviously, reviews are always a factor. It's not, we haven't found a direct correlation on ranking within Google Local Services ads and reviews, because sometimes a person with 11 reviews will be in that 3-pack when somebody else has 300 reviews and a better review score, and they're lower within the platform. There's a lot of things that could be leading to that. But again, we haven't seen like number of reviews or stars be an actual ranking factor. But I do think that, again, consumers do read reviews. They do look through those. So I think in that way, it's a performance factor for local services ads on who might get a call over somebody who might not. It's not necessarily a ranking factor. Some other things that we've seen that have worked with performance in local services ads is creativity. In certain verticals like lawyers and real estate agents, there's a headshot for local services ads. One of our clients actually dressed up in like almost like a Dumb and Dumber type kind of tuxedo, like a all orange tuxedo for his state's like team colors, and that actually slayed. He got like a million calls and really like stuck out with that headshot in his tuxedo, and he had a hat on. Another one is that you can do different business names. You can get a DBA document and kind of change your name on a Google Local Services Ads profile. I'm not sure I would 100% recommend that. If you're running Google ads and you have a Google business profile, you do want all of those assets to kind of be the same so that you kind of get those brand factors in all of those different places and they all kind of match up. Geo thing. So this is a weird one, but it relates to how people have their Google location settings set on their phone and on their computer. What I mean by that is sometimes when you do a search for like personal injury lawyer near me, it might put you in an exact zip code based on how you have your settings set up, or it might put you in a broader general area like Philadelphia or like a section of the city. So what we have found is that that actually does change how people rank in the local services ads platform. Certain people have very granular detail in the locations that they select, where they're selecting Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and then every zip code within Philadelphia. We have seen that change how people rank in this platform. If one person doesn't have the exact zip code and one does, that may put them above a different advertiser. This does seem to come and go with changes that Google's making on the back end. How LSAs have changed over time. So they've changed in a million different ways. Google is always testing different UX features on local services ads. So there's been a million different tiny little details that have changed about this platform. I think I have like over 500 tweets on all these individual changes, but really the biggest changes are that they added the ability to add negative geos, places that you don't want to show up for. They added the expanded drop down menu where it goes from a 2-pack to an 8-pack or a 3-pack to an 8-pack. When they started out, they looked like this with this 3-pack, and now it's kind of a different format where they're listed this way. And with this, it just went right into the platform. Now it has that expandable 8-pack before people go into the platform. They've also put them into new Google features. So they put them into Google Maps on iPhones. They put them in the local business finder map. They put them in competitors' Google business profiles. They've had them show up on every single page at the top. So like when you go to page 2, they're also at the top. And they're continually testing, removing these things, re-adding them back in. It does depend on your vertical. The reason that I see it so much is because it's personal injury lawyers. And again, there are some issues with that, which is why I think they're adding a lot of these features in to give more people more shots at getting calls on the Google Local Services Ads platform. And then the other two are direct business search, where you can show up just on a search for your brand. There was an example of that in this screenshot. So this one right here is like a single local services ad on a branded search, right? And then there's some things with that with direct business search, which also relates to this one, which is they eliminated disputes. There used to be a time when you could dispute leads that you got and say, hey, this wasn't really a good lead, or it didn't relate, or it was a salesperson. You can no longer do that. They've now switched to an automated dispute platform, which is done by AI. And then again, why I mentioned the direct business search is because sometimes they don't filter out all of these calls for direct business search. So you can end up getting charged like a lot of money for a direct business search when it wouldn't cost that much for like a Google Ads PPC click. So just something to keep in mind. Again, always test all of these things and see if it works for your business. Always be listening to your calls to see if somebody says, oh yeah, I just did a search for your brand and you're being charged for that call. You can escalate again by calling the number, and then submitting leads and saying, hey, like this was absolutely not, a lead. It was a direct business search. And most of the time they will work with you and give you money back if you escalate it. Okay, why don't local services ads work for all verticals? They work for a lot of verticals, and even in legal, they work for a lot of different legal categories. There's certain verticals like personal injury law where it's oversaturated. And what I mean by that is there's like 400 law firms in every major metro who are in personal injury law, right? And so what happens is there's not enough leads to go around for 400 law firms. And because of the competitiveness and people bidding and changing different settings, there tends to be kind of like a landlock in how people move in these specific, very high competition categories. Then also bad actors, which again, Google is always working on all of these things. With bad actors, they just recently did a new verification sweep where they're trying to kind of kick out people who might be aggregators or might be in states where they don't have a license. So again, they're doing this advanced verification to kind of weed that out. And then the other one I think is choice paradox. Because there's 400 lawyers in this platform, I know that they've kind of limited it over time. When you click into the platform, it's now 20 different law firms. It used to be a list of 50. But even 20 can kind of be overwhelming from a consumer's perspective. So again, they are working on that too by showing you like, hey, you've already visited this profile, or you visited this profile these number of times. So they're working on these things, but these are kind of the main problems that I see in the highly competitive verticals. How non-ad nerds view LSA. So this is not a scientific study, but I always ask family and friends, everybody in my office, really anybody I meet, I ask them two things: is how do you watch TV now, and how do you view this ad format? And then I'll like show them a search, and they'll go, oh yeah, no, I know those. They view local services ads as not an ad type. So they're not seeing this little sponsored up here. They're seeing the green check mark. They do not see the sponsored. And how they view these is as an extension of Google Maps, right? Or the local business finder. Nobody really knows what anything's called, but they say, oh yeah, it's like Google Maps. And that makes sense because these two things do have a lot of similarities, right? They got your website, they have your reviews, they have different call outs, they have the business areas that you serve. They're very similar to Google Map listings, right? So that's kind of how people view these, as more of an extension of Google Maps as a specific ad type, which I find actually very, very interesting. Here are all the available categories right now for local services ads. Like I said, there's over 100 of these, and they are continuously testing and adding in new verticals. So check this out. Look at the subcategories. Remember to look for crossovers. But again, like Google is pushing this more and more. It's at the top, and people interact with what Google puts at the top. Sales opportunities for local services ads. So right now, in every geo, there are a ton of categories that have no one in them. Okay. These are just a couple here: acupuncture, massage therapist, auto body shop. And I'm in Philadelphia, right? These businesses exist here. They just don't know about local services ads. So there's a ton of opportunities here for you to go knock on doors, to cold call, and to inform businesses of, hey, did you know about this thing called Google Local Services Ads? We think you should set up a profile. You don't have to turn it on. and then also sell them on Google Marketing overall. Because here's the reality. I have a love-hate with Google Local Services ads because there are certain challenges that we face with high competitive verticals, but people are clicking everything on the first page of Google. So they're not just clicking this. For a long time, I struggled with how these were fighting against each other. Sometimes they do, but really overall, people are still clicking everything. So it's just kind of another spot to brand yourself, another spot to get a call. People are still going to your GBB. They're still looking at organic results. They're still clicking pay-per-click ads. So it's just another thing. And it's interesting because, again, the way that people view this, at least now, is not really as an ad type. Again, here's just a few more verticals that are empty for local services ads. But again, I strongly encourage you to go explore the local services ads platform. Even in competitive verticals, sometimes there's geographical areas that don't have anybody in them, or they don't really have a lot of people in them. So there's just a ton of sales opportunities for these empty verticals. They are going to fill up naturally over time, but go out and get these people signed up and get them into Google Local Services ads. Here's how you can explore this for sales opportunities is go into the Local Services ads platform, and at the top is where you can drop down and see all the actual available verticals. And then right below that is where you can see the sub verticals for each actual category. And then you can change your zip code or city or state in the top right there to kind of see, hey, where can I find opportunities to get more people into local services ads? So remember, don't sleep on local services ads. I don't think that they're going anywhere. Google is opening these up to more and more categories. And so if you're a service-based business that has LSA available, get a profile set up today. And it's not hard. Again, there's a couple bureaucratic things that you have to walk through, but I highly encourage everybody to set this up. And that's about it. Thank you, guys. I am saving 1 or 2 gems for my next talk on local services ads at the PPC or Hero Conference in San Diego in November. And there I'll tell you guys more about how we actually actively manage these, how we separate them out from Google Ads accounts, and how we manage them together to kind of hit our monthly budget and our lead numbers now that there's kind of these 2 different platforms. And that's all I got. And questions? There, Sarah.
Awesome. Well, I was on the edge of my seat. If that tells you how great that was, we have so many questions. So I am going to pull this down, and we're going to try to get through them. Hopefully I'll still have some, but maybe we could just have you back if not. So if we can't get through these. So first question is, and I hope I'm saying this right. It sounds like Haiti. Do you use a separate tracking number for LSAs versus standard Google ads?
Yes.
That was an easy answer. So follow up on that exact question. Is it good practice to have different tracking numbers between Google Ads, LSA, and then GBP, which I don't Google My Business. Okay.
Yep. And label them all as what they are, right? So Google Ads, extension number, local services ads, Google My Business. Definitely have them separated out. So again, you can kind of see, what am I getting? Where's it coming from? And you'd be surprised how much comes from local services ads that currently probably goes to a lot of people's Google business profiles, and they have no idea it's coming from local services ads.
That makes sense. So Evans Young wants to know, can you connect LSA reports to GA4?
No, not that I know of, although you can download reports from local services ads. So there might be a way that you can you probably can't in GA4. You can in GA4, but you could probably upload stuff to a Looker Studio by downloading it from LSA and then back into Looker Studio. You can't do it with GA4. I think they're intentionally trying to keep that separate.
Okay, that's interesting.
Although you can add UTMs to your website.
Okay.
That you put on local services ads.
That makes sense.
And see things in GA4 from that.
Okay. No, so that one's really interesting. And so then, are you able to import any offline or offline platform like a CRM conversion data to LSAs?
I do not believe you can at this time. Like I said, like I showed you the Google Ads account as those conversions in there. Yes. So you can like you can look in those account shells, and I encourage everybody to do that too. It's like look and see what you can see in there, like settings wise. You can't see a lot, but you can see like how they're treating conversions, what those conversion settings are, all that kind of stuff. I don't know of anything with uploading offline conversions to LSA at this time.
And then how do you handle categories for businesses that offer more than one service? So for example, roofing and window installation.
This goes to the one we were talking about. Yeah, so this is an interesting question. Till now, and sort of still now, but Google, I don't think wants us to do it this way, is I would set them up in different local services ads accounts. So again, how vertical is a campaign, right? And you assign a budget to a campaign. That's why I would separate them out into different local services ads accounts, because then you're assigning an independent budget to windows versus the budget you're applying to doors or whatever the other example was. But I think Google wants you to keep them all in one local services ads platform. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that they allow you to budget per vertical at some point. That's not available yet, but that would solve a lot of problems there.
Okay. So do you have a different strategy for standard search versus LSA?
Awesome question. Not really specifically, although kind of, in that like for categories that tend to show local services ads a lot, we do want to try to be in that first PPC ad position, because a lot of times now they're doing local services ads like prominently at the top. There might be one PPC ad below that, and then the rest of the ads are at the bottom of the page or on the next page with like the top ad changes. So it kind of is becoming a little bit more important if you're running both of these to try to get that number one PPC ad spot right below the local services ads platform.
Okay, that's really interesting. And so another statement, I heard you mention that you could set these up for free. And then I love the term leech off of the results box appearing under the paid listing. However, I missed the bit when you mentioned how to actually do it. Is there any way you could repeat that?
Yeah. Okay.
If you want, I can put the deck back up. It's up to you.
No, it's okay. So all you're going to do is you're going to set up your local services ads profile just like you would, right? You're going to type in your credit card information, and then there's a spot in local services ads that clicks on and off the profile. So you're going to just set up your account and you're going to turn it off. You're still going to show up in the free listings when there are free listings available.
Okay, that's really, really helpful. And then Luna also wants to know, can you explain how the new dispute system works? It's also auto-disputed based on keywords in the call/message. Do you find it as effective and accurate as the manual dispute management?
I'll tread lightly here. No. So, okay, I don't want to say no. We've seen progress, and then kind of like progress goes back. So like I know they're working on it. They're working on it. But it's hit or miss. Sometimes it can be good. Sometimes it can be bad. Sometimes they miss bad leads that we do think should be auto like given back to us. So like currently I think that there's room for improvement there. There is a thing that you can still do now. It doesn't work all the time, but there's this new feedback form. It's it like in an actual lead at the top right where the dispute button used to be is now a feedback form. It says like rate this lead. About 20% of the time, if you put like very dissatisfied, that will bring up the old dispute options. And if you click the one that actually is relevant, like, oh, this was a salesperson, it may like automatically return that lead to you like right then on the feedback form. I also do know like they are tracking the feedback form. So, I'm not going to say it's working yet, but I know that they're working towards that on like trying to give you the leads that you're looking for. And I do know that they're working on the auto dispute system. As of now, again, I think it's less than halfway there. It's got room for improvement.
So another question, if you turn off direct business search, will your competitors ever show up on your branded searches?
I've heard some chatter about this, but no, I don't believe so. I've heard like some rumors, but like not in my experience. I've never seen that happen.
Okay. So we've finished all the questions. If anyone has more, feel free to add. So the good news is I can still ask questions because I said, I've been so excited about this. Yeah. So somebody who works in Google Ads all day long, what would you say are sort of the top tips, like holes that I could fall into, assumptions that I'd be making just looking at running LSAs?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So like, is there something that I could really break in here?
Oh,
Google Ads, like a bidding, for example.
Kind of, yes. Sort of. So we talked a little bit about this before the call.
Yep.
Is that LSA is kind of weird in that like the budgets,
yes, okay.
Ads, and that you can set a $35 million a week budget actually, right? I've seen in cases where people do that it doesn't break it, but you get flagged and your profile kind of drops, right? So I wouldn't recommend setting a $35 million budget just to kind of game the system. Like I said in the presentation, like I always kind of recommend to clients or anybody I'm talking to about LSAs to kind of set your budget a little bit higher than you're comfortable with, but don't immediately go to 35 million because they are watching what you're doing, and that does raise an internal flag when you go that high. So if you're in a really highly competitive vertical like legal, and there are lawyers that are setting it super high, I'm not saying like don't also set your budget super high, but walk it up is always my advice. So like don't just go from $500 a week to 35 million. Walk that up a little bit at a time. That's like the one thing I would say is like that they do flag those like huge changes, and it can kind of result in you getting put at the bottom.
And it sounds like people are doing that because they're frustrated when they won't serve.
Yes.
Okay. That's so interesting. And it's a weekly budget. So that was the other thing we talked about a little bit before the call is, can you talk a little bit again about how the local service ads and then the ad platform with the budgets? So like if I'm a law firm and I'm running local service ads and then I'm also running Google Ads, like search.
So that's where it gets tricky, super tricky, is because a lot of these local service ads accounts are connected to Google Ads accounts.
Yep.
And what happens is what we just talked about, right? Like it's a highly competitive vertical. And so you're setting your budget like a lot higher than you actually want to spend. And you're doing that because of problems with the platform, which is like it's oversaturated and you're trying to get calls. But what can happen with that is all of a sudden it can start spending a lot, right? And you might not see it right away. And then it kind of eats into your whole pay-per-click like budget that you have for that month.
Gotcha.
So you just have to like, if you're going to raise your budget, and everybody knows this, just make sure you're eagle eyeing your account.
Right.
Call tracking does help
Yep.
because you can like set up notifications for like, let's say just specifically LSA calls, and sort of just know in the back of your head, okay, a PI call costs $400, right? And then just kind of keep a tally of, okay, I got 8 calls in the last 5 days, right? So there are ways to manage it.
Okay.
The best way is to just keep an eye on your accounts at all times.
So interesting. So is your agency, when people go on vacation, have like a really strict process where somebody is babysitting that account?
Yes.
It sounds like it's a little bit more stressful than Google Ads babysitting.
It's just the two together. It's not that one or the other is super stressful, but when they're together and you have a monthly budget for both, it can get a little bit stressful and out of hand sometimes.
Yeah. So we actually had another question come in. If you had a recommendation for call tracking software that you like, or do you know all of them?
I mean, I've worked with a few different ones. CallRail is probably my favorite. I think it's like the industry standard. It's cheap. You can easily set up new numbers. So that would probably be my recommendation.
Okay. No, this is really, really interesting. And actually, we have 4 minutes left. So the one thing I am going to do is talk about our sponsors one more time, and then we might have room for a couple more questions. So again, our webinar is brought to you by Jumpfly, Clever Programmatic, and AdWorld Experience. So here at the Paid Search Association, wouldn't be here without our sponsors. Also, we are on Slack, and we're on all the social platforms. So follow us there. And definitely come and interact with the group here. So luckily I tried to say that fast, but get our time in for our sponsors. So I guess I'm going to come back to another question. And again, we sort of talked on this before, but I've seen enough, but I'm unsure. So you're technically not supposed to set up multiple Google Ads accounts, but if you did do that, it would help with budgeting, and potentially even like if you were in a couple different verticals like windows and roofing. So is that sort of a use case around why people are doing that?
I think so. And again, like I hope that Google maybe hears this and goes, okay, maybe we should set up individual budgets per vertical. Because again, like back to these run out of Google Ads accounts, like you're like when you set up a Google Ads campaign, you're setting a budget on that campaign, right? But then Google on local services ads is saying add in all of these different areas that apply to you and set one budget. And so again, like I think that's something that's kind of detrimental. And again, why I think people do the separating it out into different verticals. So you do hear different things too from local services ads as they kind of make all these changes on the back end. I'm not 100% positive that that's like a definite no. I did hear that from one local services ads representative who said you can't do that anymore. And I said, but you guys told us to do it that way, which they did. So I get mixed messaging as they test different things and change the platform. Again, it's very new. Well, not very new. 5 years now for lawyers, but it's new in the problems that they're trying to solve with it. And again, like a lot of it is like bad actor related or like oversaturation related. And so like they're trying to get rid of all of these billions of accounts that people have created to make it work so that they can make it work better. But again, there's always kind of drawbacks both ways.
Right. No, that makes sense. Okay, so I have a totally off the wall question. Do you think they would ever just say, okay, local service ads, you're going to be part of PMAX now?
Well, so we've always talked about that. I don't think so, but I think that what a lot of us have said is that PMAX and local services ads might be the only campaign types in a couple of years. And that kind of makes sense to me.
Well, that's why, because like I'm looking and I'm like, reminiscent. Okay.
And the more that I see them put new business categories or verticals into local service ads, it does make me question that. Although I don't think they're going to get rid of PPC ads, but again, it might be that PPC has run out of Performance Max campaigns and there's local services ads. Who knows? That's like a rumor, a theory that people have. I do think they're still going to keep search ads because again, it's like, it's never just one thing.
Right.
People are I don't know if you've ever read The Messy Middle, but it's like the way people buy stuff isn't like, some people just click on an ad and call, but a lot of people are doing that research and comparing and contrasting. And the more that they see you in their path, the more you become a choice that they call. And so I do think like if you're running PPC ads, local services ads, dominating organic, you're just more of a choice. It's just like another spot where you can show. And then again, going back to like local services ads don't show up on every search. I know that Google is working towards them being signals like per individual user. I don't think they're there yet, but for now they're showing up on like high conversion time. So if you look at 9 o'clock, you might not see them. If you look at 3 o'clock, you're going to see them.
Okay. Well,
But
this
it's
was
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. All these weird caveats between.
This was so interesting. I cannot wait. Hopefully we'll get you back here because I feel like I could ask you questions for an hour on this. But we'll put your contact information up one more time right here. And then we're a minute over, so we can just go ahead and hop. I'm going to end this stream. So thanks for joining us for the Paid Search webinar today.
Thanks for having me.